What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful holiday it is. Isko badao thoda sa bhaiya. We'll begin as usual with a question that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. Why should I be excited about life? I mean, it's a rough world out there. So, if we are discouraged about life because it's rough, it means we haven't understood life. It means we've misunderstood the entire thing. We don't get excited about life because, oh, this is so easy. Life is not like a pop math quiz where if it's easy, you're lucky. If it's not, you're not. The whole point of life is not about avoiding difficulty or avoiding roughness, but about discovering who we are. And so that's why we live. It's not, oh, things are too difficult, so forget it. Today's actually a perfect day for this question because it's Ram Navami. And one of the things that I love about sharing the lives of our divine incarnations, manifestations on earth, Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, is when you look at their lives, they're full of kind of nothing but challenge and difficulty. Now you think, okay, this is God. I mean, think about this from a purely common sense perspective here. This is God coming onto earth, not because he has to, not like we are stuck with our karmic packages. Coming on earth because he wants to. Because he has chosen to, in form, in of course whatever form he chooses, at whatever time he chooses, in whatever way he chooses, God is writing the whole show. You know, it's like sometimes you have those really famous movie directors or producers who give cameos. Right? Alfred Hitchcock, I know, used to do that all the time. There would just be this quick kind of 3-second shot of him just in a frame. And you see that a lot just for the fun of it. They'll do a cameo. Well, as the one in charge, clearly they get to decide when their cameo is, which scene, what role they want to play. It's up to them. So when God comes on earth and is here in a major role, not just as a quick cameo to make us smile and figure out, okay, where was the cameo this time? But in a major role. Whether you read the Mahabharata, you read the Ramayana, these are major roles that God has played on earth. Well, so clearly God could decide what role God wanted to come in, how God wanted the script to go. And what do? What do they write in their own script? Suffering. Look at Ram's life. I mean, he spends his youth as this perfect child. And anyone who's tried to be a perfect child knows how hard that is. And yes, of course, he's God. And yet part of when God comes onto earth is that God assumes and accepts the human aspects. Being perfect is not easy. Perfect brother, perfect son, perfect embodiment of Dharma, right? I mean, did anyone here make it through their youth without doing something really mischievous? Something really naughty? Something that you just prayed to God that your parents should not find out? So, being perfect must have not been easy. But he did it. And then here's the day that is sort of the culmination of all of that perfection that he's embodied. He's going to be coronated king. It's his big day. His father is called the kingdom. Everybody's there to celebrate him, to honor him. And he's going to be coronated. But instead, what happens? He gets called in. We spoke a few nights ago about this story as it weaves in with karma. But he gets called in to King Dashrath, his father, and is told not only are you not going to be coronated, but actually you have to leave immediately. Not like get your affairs in order. But you need to leave. And you can't come back for 14 years. And no, you don't get to take the cars and the mansions and the money and your armies with you. You go with nothing. Nothing. Not even proper clothes on your back. Imagine. 14 years in the forest, in the jungle. Even before the actual war of Lanka. Right? I mean, camping is fun when you know that you've got a house to come back to. Right? I mean, okay, a night or 2 or 4 in a tent is nice when you know at the end of all this there's a hot shower and a big meal waiting for me. But when there is nowhere to go into, and then of course his wife, his beloved wife, gets kidnapped. It's being held across the ocean. He has no way of getting there, no way of even verifying that she's there. And she gets kidnapped because he got duped. He got taken for a ride by the demon, off in search of a golden deer. Imagine what he must have felt like. I mean, we know what it feels like to let down someone we love. He left his wife and she got kidnapped by a demon being held across the ocean. And of course, the trials continue. And they don't even end after 14 years when he finally gets back and is in the kingdom. Now, due to this negative gossip, low minds, he has to leave his wife and children in the hermitage. They can't even be with him in the kingdom. Now you imagine if you were God and you got to choose any situation you wanted to come onto earth. Does that sound like fun? I mean, would you say, yeah, I want door number 1? Give me the exile, give me the wars, give me the wife kidnapped, all the guilt. No, you'd be like, whatever's behind door number 2, I want that. Even sight unseen, it's got to be better than this. But he chose it. And Bhagwan Krishna chose it. And he was born in jail. Right? You think your life is tough. How many times his uncle tried to kill him while he was still in single digits? Right? We think our brother or sister was mom or dad's favorite, and so we basically, ruin the rest of our lives because I wasn't mom's favorite. Well, look at Krishna Bhagwan's life. Look at what he experienced from his uncle, his own uncle. So why does God choose these roles? It's not because of their karma. They're not stuck like we are. They do it, I believe, in order to teach us, to show us, look, the perfect life, the divine life, the life that even God creates for himself is actually a life that's full of struggle. Because the point of life is not to be free of struggle. The point of life is to know who you are, which of course in his role as Arjuna's charioteer, he gets to teach to Arjun, to teach all of us through Arjun. He knows who he is. He's teaching us who we are. In Bhagwan Ram's case, to teach us how to live in Dharma. He's shown us, quite literally. This is how you do it. You don't like your stepmother? No, you don't get to call her names and be rude and obnoxious. Actually, you do what she says. And you do it gracefully. He's shown us how to walk the most difficult paths of life. So we get excited about life because life is our opportunity to experience the truth of who we are, to experience the divine in us. When we are dead, without a body, we cannot have that experience. It's a very interesting aspect of this Leela that God has created, is that in order for us to actually expand our consciousness enough to know that we are one with God, we have to be in this separate body with a at least decently functioning brain in our skull that enables us to discriminate truth from falsehood, Shreyas from Preyas, the right path, to use that brain to make a decision. I'm going to meditate instead of sleep in. I'm going to come to Satsang instead of go to the bar. I'm going to live according to Dharma. I'm going to pray. I'm going to observe austerities. I'm going to inquire, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I'm going to serve so selflessly, so fully, every minute and every moment, so that I may see myself in those I serve, so that I may lose absolute attachment to this ego self that says that's not my job. You've got to have at least a mildly functioning brain to make those sorts of choices, to ask those sorts of questions, to inquire on that level. So that's the excitement of life, is to use every minute and every moment to get closer and closer to knowing who we are. Not just intellectually, but actually to feeling it, to experiencing it. That's the point. Are there any questions that anyone here might have? Yeah, in the back. And then you. Pale aapko, fir aapko.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
So I have read Gita. I have read Shiv Puran. I have learned few. I've learned from few kathas and many more. So I never find any evident answer that how did everything or anything came into existence. What was the first thing that came into existence, and how did this universe arrive? Who came first? And is this Shiva who came first? And if that is so, how did he came? So it's a big question, I know, but it would be great if you can answer that.
Well, it's not only a big question. It's like saying, let's do Srimad Bhagavatam, Shiv Puran, all of it, all of the Puranas. Let's do it all in the next 6 minutes. They're beautiful stories of the ocean, the infinite ocean, of Bhagwan Vishnu lying in the infinite ocean, right? Of the lotus flower emerging from him, of Brahma the creator emerging on the lotus flower and creation happening. I mean, there's beautiful stories of that are easily available. So I won't go into all of them. They're wonderful, and if we were going to spend the next week here telling stories, they would be fun and wonderful stories with morals and teachings. But you asked about every particle, everything here. So I want to take it beyond the stories, because when we speak about the Sat, the truth, when we say Satsang, right, it's that association of presence of truth. Now, in order for it to be the capital T truth, it has to be equally applicable to people of every religion, of every race, of every walk of life. And so while we have these beautiful, beautiful stories, how according to our Hindu tradition, how according to Sanatan Dharma, creation happened, for it to be that capital T truth, it needs to be something that doesn't require us to see God as this trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, that doesn't require us to believe all of the stories, as beautiful and wonderful and inspiring as they are. And so what I want to do is just take a moment and take it into a level separate from the stories we've been given. From a scientific perspective, science tells us it all happened from the Big Bang, right? Now here's the thing about that. we've actually got evidence that it happened. It's not a theory. There's actually lots and lots and lots of evidence that it happened. We actually have a lot of evidence that evolution happened the way that it did. We've got all kinds of fossilized remains. It's not about theories, it's not about hypotheses, it's not about good stories. We actually know. And that's not my science background, so I can't take you into too much detail. But I know that people who know can walk you through, and I've seen extraordinary museum exhibitions of walking us through the last, 15 billion years. And what we know from fossils, what we know from carbon dating, what we know from energy. So we know scientifically, regardless of our religion, that there was this thing called a Big Bang, that 100% of the energy in the universe today was generated in that. We know that we had this physical evolution from single-celled organisms into multi-celled organisms. We know that we emerged from the ocean onto land, which, by the way, if you go back to Vishnu avatars, right? If you actually take the Vishnu avatars, they follow the exact path of the evolution that science gives us, which of course shows that our rishis and sages and saints who gave us these stories actually had access through their inner wisdom, through their inner tools, to knowing that which Darwin would discover only thousands and thousands of years later. One thing I think is impossible to deny, regardless of your religious tradition. There had to be what I call a capital P planner in order for this all to happen. So yes, the Big Bang happened. Yes, evolution has happened. But it didn't happen randomly. Now, I say this to you as a scientist, not just as a spiritual person. Anybody who has spent time in a science laboratory with beakers and Bunsen burners and crucibles knows that in a lab, even knowing all your ingredients, following the instructions line by line, the vast majority of times when you turn that Bunsen burner on, you get nothing. Right? Something went wrong. It didn't happen. It didn't work. And you're looking around like, did anybody else's work? Sometimes you get a bad smell. Sometimes you get some fire. Sometimes you get some liquid. Now, I mention this because even today, hundreds and hundreds of years into what we call modern science, with all of the best tools, we know how everything is made up. I mean, organic chemists can show you, and I remember being in those classes with, rods and styrofoam balls of how the molecules, not just, you can take a leaf. I don't want to pull it off the tree, but if you look at a leaf, a good scientist could tell you not only how much carbon, how much oxygen, how much hydrogen, how much nitrogen, but could actually show you with styrofoam balls and rods how those molecules, how the atoms, how it all works, how they join together. But they still can't create it. best science laboratories in the world, we cannot create life. The very best we've ever been able to do is cloning, right? You can Xerox it sometimes, but we can't create it. We cannot create even a leaf, a mosquito. We can't create an amoeba that's alive in a petri dish, knowing everything we know, having all of the tools at our fingertips. As a scientist, the idea that all of this was utterly random, to me it defies science. Even if I weren't spiritual, it just doesn't make sense as a scientist. And so, what most people can agree on, yes, of course, there are hardcore atheists who say no, but leaving them aside, there was a planner, capital P planner, with a capital P plan, who understands how carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen and oxygen, how these things work. And who created this thing that we now call the Big Bang to give us what we needed in order to have life, right? So whether we say Brahma did it, or whether we say the capital P planner did it, either way, it happened. Every bit of energy that is on Earth today came out of that. And here we are, just in newer and newer, different, ever-changing forms. So when we say we are one, when we say that we are not separate, on a spiritual level, we speak about the soul. We are one. Now, interestingly, energetically, you could say the same thing. We're all just really in the same swirling mass of energy and space. You know, they say that if you take all of the matter, the actual matter on Earth, and you remove the space from it, and you put it together, that it'll fit in less than a teaspoon. Now that's really hard for us to wrap our brains around. I can't actually wrap my brain around that. But I believe it. I've heard it from enough hardcore scientists to know it's true. Basically, we are space. We're space and energy. There's no you over there and me over here. That's the illusion that we speak about. This illusion of separateness. We're one. We're space and energy. Or we're soul. Divine. That capital K knowing that flows through all of that space and energy, such that we can have these exquisite forms. I mean, that takes an amazing planner, an amazing capital K knower. It's like, how do you take all of this space and energy and turn it into a sunset, a sunrise? That's the working of the divine through this creation. So you can enjoy the stories, take them as this is how it happened, enjoy the science, take it as how it happened, either way. Point is, we're here now. As this divine-filled, divine-pervaded space and energy. And all we're called upon to do is wake up to that truth. Beautiful. 1 second. We had a... Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm very, very thankful and grateful to you for today's satsang. It's amazing. I just want to share a little bit of story before I ask my question, if that's okay. I came here in the beginning of 2020. Spent 3 weeks here. I was going through a very rough time, like the question we had today. And I would sit here, ask you questions every day, and you very gently answer. And you gave me a lot in these 3 weeks. And then COVID hit, and I went home, and I did a lot of work on myself. And I was looking for this spiritual journey, the real answers, the real truth of life. Who am I? What's happening? Why do we suffer? And there was a lot that I learned here. So I came here as a painful kid, and now I'm here today to express my gratitude to you for everything you did, the love you showed, the wisdom you shared. So thank you so, so much. And my question is, I find that in our life, the only reason we suffer is because we have this big ego. We identify with our false ego rather than identifying with the truth. Like everyone knows there is a soul, there is an Atma, or there's a God, but we still identify with the fact that we're human. I am this, I am that. And if we look at it, our pride is just so big that we don't allow life to flow in. We don't open our heart. So I just want to know, like, how can you be humble? Because if you, or that's what I feel, if you can become humble and open your heart, then God will come to you.
Of course.
Life will come to you.
Yeah.
Abundance will come to you. But sometimes, and you're trying that, but sometimes, your ego just becomes big and you're not there, you're not aware, and you say something or do something that's not in alignment with your dharma. So...
Beautiful. So first of all, welcome back. So happy to see you again. You've touched upon a two-part issue. One being the ego and arrogance. And the second being the mindlessness. That we do things when we are not aware. So the first piece is, this is why we need to be mindful. This is why so many of the spiritual traditions, not only our Hindu tradition, but many of them have some practice of mindful awareness. Because if we are not mindful, we cannot be living our dharma. Then we are constantly just reacting to the world. Being mindful enables us to actually act rather than react. So luckily it's something that can be learned. It's why, these days there's so many mindfulness training programs. They're teaching it in schools, they're teaching it in hospitals, they're teaching it in corporations. Because it's really a key to life. But it's a skill, like any skill. And you have to practice it. Fortunately, you can practice it as you live. So you can do mindful eating. You can do mindful walking. And just little decisions like, I'm not going to be on my phone while I'm walking from point A to point B. Neither speaking nor looking at it, so that I can be mindful. I'm going to use the 5 minutes it takes me to get from where I park my car to my office to do mindful walking and mindful breathing while I'm walking. Just little tiny choices. I mean, how much work do you really get done in the 5-minute walk? Where most people are just scrolling social media anyway. Do it when you sit down at your desk. Give yourself these moments while you eat. avoid the instinct to be on the phone or scrolling something or watching something or listening to something. Use it as an opportunity to be mindful. And of course, try to bring in a meditative practice every day that actually teaches that mindfulness. It gives you the deep practice of it. Because whatever form of meditation we do, it cultivates mindfulness. We have to be present or we're not meditating. So fortunately, that's a skill that can be learned. You just have to give it a little bit of time and attention. In terms of the ego, it's really a choice we have to make. We're so used to living and thinking in a certain way. But yeah, you said it perfectly. It creates suffering. Our ego is the greatest cause of suffering. But we only can break free when we recognize that. Nobody's going to be able to convince us that our ego is why we're suffering. Because what we think is, oh, you just don't know. I mean, the ego kicks in, right? Oh, God, this person, when are they going to be quiet? Like, obviously, I'm not suffering. So we have to be aware. We have to be honest about how we are suffering. Even if outside everything's perfect, are we fulfilled? Do we feel close to God? Do we feel like we are instruments in God's hands? Do we feel love and generosity and compassion overflowing from us? And we have just an instinct to give and to serve because we feel so abundant? So these are signs that we are not suffering. But where we feel like we are contracting and hoarding our love, our time, our energy, our resources. When we feel that we've got to make it happen because God doesn't care. God's not fair. Nothing is fair. No one is fair. These are hallmarks of someone who's suffering. Because we've cut ourselves off. We've closed our hearts. But we have to be honest about it. So when you really recognize that you're suffering, and you're mindful, then the moment the ego starts to arise, you allow yourself to sink into a moment of what's really not so easy vulnerability. Because the ego is the answer. The ego's the one who comes in and takes over the moment. We feel safe, we feel contained. But if we don't allow the ego to run the show, then there we are in our vulnerability. And so we have to be prepared and ready to do that. And the only way that we can be is when we've recognized that we are suffering, that the other way isn't working. When you realize that it's like the water faucet is on, flowing with this beautiful water, but our bucket is upside down. And so the water is just flowing over the top of the bucket, and we wonder why our bucket is empty. We realize we've got to turn it the right way. But that means doing things a whole new way. It means I don't always have the answer. It means I'm not always right. It means I don't always let myself tell myself a story about how I'm the best or even about how I'm the worst, because they're both ego. But I just allow myself to sit in a moment of vulnerability without a story and to just feel it, to just be there. And to know that I'm not going to explode or implode or cease to exist, that the sky's not going to fall if I don't have a story about it. The enemy of the ego is our vulnerability. And so, if we're prepared to live in that space of just openness, that's when we get free of the ego. So bring in the mindfulness. Recognize your bucket's upside down. You're going to try a whole new way. And then just as it arises, don't yell at it, because that's just other side of the ego. Just come back to the breath. Come back to your mantra. Don't let it do its thing. Just stay in the moment. Stay in the moment. Stay in the breath. Because the ego gets all up in the mind. So if you're anchored in the breath, in the moment, in the here and now, the ego can't grab hold of you. So just be here. And then you'll see that'll become your new way of being. And you'll realize, oh my God, sky didn't fall. I was vulnerable. I didn't know the answer. I didn't have a story. There was no good guy or bad guy. And actually, look how beautiful the moment turned out. And then you'll have more and more of those moments. And those will enable you actually to connect not only to yourself and God, but also to others in a much deeper way. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful day and morning to our family joining us from all over the world. I am going to Delhi tomorrow morning for a couple of days. I'll be back on the 13th, which is Wednesday. So we will not have satsang Monday or Tuesday. We will have satsang again on Wednesday. And I look so forward to seeing you all here on Wednesday. You have a quick question. Are you here on Wednesday? No. Okay. We'll take it quickly and then end. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Before many years, I am also working in social service organizations, and I am enjoying it many times. But during these days, I am in a trap, and I feel that I am helpless in myself. So I stop all these operations and find out why the consciousness is put me in trap, and so I want to discover how consciousness mind works. So then I read Krishnamurti Vipassana. They tell that the sympathy is also a sensation, just like good sensation, bad sensation. Sympathy is also a sensation to help someone to go there, and that is also a trap of mind, and every attachment bring you in suffering. So after all these, I just watching my sympathies, helping someone, just watching, not helping, acting on just watching. And as you said there before, that ma'am, you can also be awareful, or you can also be knowing yourself during service, as you mentioned. And I feel that when I am help someone or serve someone, I am lost. I am totally dissolved in it. I lost my awareness. So how you describe that you aware during service, or during the help someone you are awareful? How you describe it?
So he's asking about sympathy. He's read that it's a trap. and then about how to be aware, or should we be aware when we're serving others, or should we lose our awareness? So sympathy is in separation. Sympathy says, oh ho ho, bachari. Right? It's me over here, feeling badly for you over there. I'm the one who has, you're the one who doesn't have. Sympathy is that. It's not a bad thing, in my book. But it's not the highest of where we're going. And here's why, again, in my book, it's not a bad thing. Because we are here, yes, as consciousness, as divinity. But we've been given human hearts. And I don't believe in a God that makes mistakes. And if we've been given a human heart, it is because that heart is supposed to feel. And it feels love. And it feels sympathy. On higher levels, it feels empathy and compassion. And I do not believe that the highest calling is to be separate from other people's pain. Now, one of the reasons, though, that sympathy or pity can be a trap is it keeps us stuck, separate from the one who is suffering. In that way, empathy, really feeling with the other person, not feeling for them. Sympathy is, oh, I feel for you. I feel badly for you. I'm great. I'm going to go have a nice dinner, but oh, I'm so sorry that you're going to go to sleep hungry tonight. Empathy is, your pain is my pain. Empathy is that oneness. Compassion flows out of the awareness that we are one. Now, there absolutely may be those who say that's a trap. Live only in pure consciousness. And just watch. To me, I'm not saying this is the right way, but to me, to live like that denies that I've been given a heart for a reason. And it's like saying that God made a mistake or that this heart is just here to trick me and trap me. And I don't believe that's true. I believe that the power of love and compassion is there because we are supposed to feel love and compassion. Now, yes, obviously we get into attachments and things that do make us stuck, things that are traps, but that's a different topic. It's a different situation. The experience of wanting to help others is, I believe, the highest calling. I mean, when Bhagavan Krishna speaks about karma yoga, the yoga of action, well, it's how we use every action in order to experience oneness with God. Karma yoga on the ground can be simply mindful walking. I'm doing the action of walking and I'm experiencing union with God in my awareness. But karma yoga also is feeding the poor. It's planting trees. It's building schools. And so that stems out of love, compassion, empathy, sympathy. Now, in terms of awareness when we're serving, the awareness you want to lose is the awareness of me as the one who's serving you. Because as long as I feel like I'm the doer, then I'm stuck. Then I'm stuck. This is as Bhagavan Krishna talks about, right? If I think I'm the doer, I'm accruing all this karma for it. But if I do it with what we call nimitta matram bhav, this bhav of being just an instrument. Nimitta matram, an instrument in God's hands. That's the way we serve. So we are aware that we are an instrument in God's hands. We are aware that the ones we are serving are ourself. And we lose the awareness of ourself as the doer.
But when we are not always awareful, we lose awareness and not nimit bhava always, then we go in trip.
We do. This is why we were just speaking about mindfulness. That's why we need mindfulness. It's why we practice meditation and mindfulness.
How you aware during service? How just you are acting, how you...
हम ऐसे करेंगे कि एक्चुअली हम यहाँ समाप्त हो जाएंगे. अगर आप वापस भी आ सकते हैं 2-3 दिन के बाद, तो हम इसकी और गहराई में चले जाएंगे. But that's a good point. Yes, we can also take these at future satsangs as well. Because the whole science of awareness, I mean, it's a much deeper and broader topic. But what I was just speaking with him about is where you want to go. You want to be mindful of every moment. And in that mindfulness,